everybody. Welcome to a conversation with Roland Mann.
Hi, everyone.
My co-host today is Julius Freeman.
Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's having a nice Saturday, staying cool. Well, I mean, at least in here in Southern California. I don't know about the rest of the country though.
Over here in Oklahoma, it is hot.
Okay, all right.
It's hot down here in Florida too.
Okay, well there you
We
go.
kind of
There
got
you
the
go.
U.S. covered, don't we?
I think we do.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do.
California, Oklahoma, Florida.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Roland, the reason I asked you here is because I want to talk to you, and really, I want to hear a bunch of stories about the past because I love hearing those old stories about the Marvel, Malibu,
Yeah.
good times. One of my favorite comic books right here.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, nice,
Wow.
dude.
Arrow
Nice.
number one, yeah. I think you were streaming with Art T Bear, and I mentioned this in the comments, but I got a GI Joe and I painted him to look like the Arrow because I really love the Arrow.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I did.
What? So
That's
you,
cool,
you
dude.
still have it?
Not anymore.
Oh.
It snapped into pieces years ago.
Very
Oh, that's
cool.
right, because those old GI Joes were made out of the rubber bands, right?
Yeah. The other
Yeah,
one
that's
band
right,
Center.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, about the Arrow. So I had a pitch, and I think I've still got a copy of the really rough draft somewhere around here. I had a pitch of because I don't know if you recall Miss Fury. I had done a miniseries of Miss Fury, and I had a pitch of Miss Fury and the Arrow that I had kind of bouncing around with Malibu. And they had given me some feedback, and I was going to do it with Lorene Haynes, who had done the cover art for Miss Fury.
Okay, cool.
It never happened, but that's one of those just never happened stories,
Right. Well, tell us how you got into the business to begin with. How'd you start?
Yeah, comics is what taught me to read. As a kid, I wasn't a reader. I grew up in Mississippi. My family's all, you can see my shirt. My family's all from Arkansas. I would much rather. I was one of those kids. I would much rather be outside. I came home from school and I went straight outside. Throwing dirt clods at cows, playing with my army men in the sandbox. I would just much rather be outside, and so I began to fall behind in school, but just on the reading because I didn't care. And so one day at the grocery store, you know how kids can be. I saw a comic book on the rack, and I was just like, "Can I have it? Can I have it? Can I have it?" And my mom cut a deal with me. My mom and her brilliance. She had already been looking for ways to, kind of get me involved. My mom's an avid reader. I mean, she can wipe out a book in a day. I am not that fast. Even still today, I'm not that fast of a reader. But she cut a deal with me. She said, I'll buy this for you on one condition. And I'm like, oh, anything, Mom, whatever you want. She said, I'll buy it. You read it, and then you tell me about what you read. Oh, of course, Mom. Yeah. So she bought me a copy of The Avengers, written by Steve Englehart and drawn by George Perez.
Wow.
And it was full of all of these characters I had never seen, never heard of, but they were so cool, and they knew each other, and they were like, having these arguments like, everybody does, and they were fighting a bad guy. And I'm like, I don't know any of these people, but they look so cool. What is all of this? And I got hooked. And of course, as comics are wont to do, it was continued. And so I'm like, Mom, I don't know what Captain America is on the table. I don't know what happens to him. Can I get the next one? And she's like, and of course, I can just, now thinking back, I can just see the wheels in her brain thinking, well, I'll make the same deal with you.
Yeah.
And so, so that was it. I got hooked on comics, and I quickly started buying Spider-Man right there after that. I was buying Avengers and Spider-Man, Captain America, and I went. And I'm not sounds. Even today, as I say it, it sounds unbelievable, but I went from being at the bottom of my class in reading in that school year to the top of my class. Wow. I don't know that I was the very top, but I was close to the top, And I attribute all of that to comics because I went from reading comics to reading classic science fiction, things like, Jules Verne and H.G. Wells and things like that. And I fell in love with classic science fiction because The Men in the Moon. What? Yeah, I want to read that. What is that? The H.G. Wells, the Time Machine.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Was a big one. And so that's what got me to reading. And of course, you can't tell from our video, but I'm a tall guy, right? So I'm a big fella. I was never picked on in school. Now I did grow up in at the time where you got picked on for reading comics, but because I was a bigger fella, people didn't pick up. But I kind of had a foot in both worlds. I was a football player. I wasn't really the jock, but I played sports. But I was also kind of the geek, and so I was the guy sitting in the back of the class reading my comic, with my book and my comic. And the football team would, occasionally, poke at me a little bit. Oh, Roland, you read Spider-Man again? And so, so I took a creative writing. I started making my own comics when I was in about 7th grade, right? I loved them so much. I was just drawing on notebook paper. And I heard someone say that when they started making comics, they were just copying, they were doing, Spider-Man and all that. I didn't do that. I didn't know you could do that. I just made my own characters up, right? Now, they were all carbon copies of the Avengers, right? But they were my characters that I made up. And when I got to be a senior, I had a creative writing class. I honestly just took it because I needed credits to graduate, right? And of course, I wrote about a lot of superhero stuff. And the teacher there was so encouraging. She was like, you have a very creative mind. You should consider doing more of this. And I'm like, you can do. I come from a family of farmers, right? You can do this. What do you mean I can do this? So when I went to college, I went into college studying computer science. And I took 2.5 years of computer science until I realized I hate math. Cannot stand math. Plus, it makes my brain hurt. Right. So without telling my dad, I changed my major. I changed my major from computer science to creative writing, and finished with the and when I was a junior, when I kind of made that change, I started making submissions to Marvel and DC. Got all the rejections, right? I had a nice talk with Danny Fingerroth later, and I said, yeah, we got to talk, and he goes, yeah, you rejected me several times on Spider-Man. And he looked at me and goes, I rejected you? I don't remember that. I said, well, of course you don't. but yeah, that's how. So that's what got me interested in it, in comics. Now, the way I actually broke in is I went to school at Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg, and I was already, like I said, I was sending out submissions to mostly Marvel and DC. I wasn't big independents yet. I really hadn't kind of discovered them at that point in time. But my wife, who was my girlfriend then, she was running for homecoming court, and there was a group of girls. So she was, I think she was probably the junior, and then there was a sophomore, a freshman, and a senior. They were all going around. Well, back then they had to be escorted into the men's dorms, and so I was just going around, escorting them and letting them do their things. Hey, vote for me! I'm, blah 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 blah, whatever. And I'm sitting there in one of these dorms. I'm looking at the wall, and there's this huge painting, right? And I'm like, I don't know that character. I've never seen that character before. And so I asked the guy who's standing there listening to all the girls, I said, do you know who that character is? I've never seen that character before. And he goes, yeah, his name is Shadowhawk. I'm like, Shadowhawk? I'm like, I've never heard of Shadowhawk. He goes, yeah, because I made him up. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah. He said, I want to make comics because I want to draw comics. I said, get out of here. He goes, I said, I want to write comics. And I said, so I swapped information with him, and then called him up later. And that person ended up being Stephen Butler. I don't know if you know who he is, but Stephen then became a good friend of mine. He became a roommate of mine slightly later. We worked on Cat and Mouse together. He drew Silver Storm, and then he went on to draw Badger for First Comics, and then he moved on to draw Web of Spider-Man for Marvel.
Nice.
Yeah, he does a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog now. Okay. Yeah, so that's who that was, and we just this was right after the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so we were heavily inspired. But now I'm not saying, people always say, oh, so you were big fans of Turtles. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we were inspired by the Turtles because they came out, they did so good. We looked at it from our perspective back then. Why are people buying this comic book? Right? It's like, if they can make it, we can do it. And that's so that inspired us to do our own independent thing. And that's how Cat and Mouse was born, which is the first series that we sold to Malibu, Aircel Comics. Nice. But, that was during part of the independent boom of the late 80s. So mid-late 80s.
How'd you get did you already know, did you already have a contact with Malibu Comics, or did you just blindly just submitted it and like, all right, let's see if they say it. They say okay.
Blindly submitted it. Yeah. We actually had, so we tried to publish it ourselves, but we didn't know what we're doing. Right. We this is the days also when there were like 12 distributors, right? There were, and funny thing is, somewhere in my files, I've still got all those orders, right? So we actually started our own company, called it Top Comics, and solicited Cat and Mouse #1 in 1987, right? And we got the orders for it, 4,400 copies. I remember that still.
Wow.
We went to all the banks in Hattiesburg because we didn't have that kind of money to get it printed, right? It's like that was going to be $2,000. Yeah. Now, keep in mind, we're still in college, and we didn't have $2,000 to get a comic book printed, but we took our orders and we went to the banks and we said, look, we have orders for this comic book. We need to borrow money so that we can pay the printer, and then this is the money we'll get back, right? And of course, it would have paid for the print run easily, right? Plus, we would have made a little bit of money because it was all in black and white. So, but the banks, and again, I'm from Mississippi and proud to be a Southerner, but this is one of those moments I'm going to make fun of them. I kid you not. At one of the banks, guy said, "Well, I ain't never given no loan for no comic book before. Think you can use a tractor with that?" And I'm like, "No, we can't use a tractor. No. What? Like, I give loans for tractors and cars, but I've never given a loan for a comic book before." We went to all the banks in Hattiesburg, and no one would get. We were college kids. We didn't have any collateral. We kept telling them our orders. That's our collateral right here. Look, right. And we even brought them photocopies. Look, the comic book is already done. I just need money to pay these people to print it.
Right.
And so we couldn't make that happen. And then the comic shop owner, who was a big supporter of ours, said, "I know a guy in New York City, or in New York." And so he hooked us up with a guy in New York who was publishing a comic called Jazz Age Chronicles by Ted Slampiak. And so we sent copies of Cat and Mouse there. They published one issue of Cat and Mouse in I was going to say 88, but one issue of the book, and then they went bankrupt. Yeah, so they did a couple of issues of Jazz Age, but I don't remember how many. So as they were going bankrupt, they just said, here's like 500 copies. We don't want them. We can't use them. You take them. So we had them, and we used those then to send out our submissions. We sent them out to First, Kamiko, Now, Malibu, Caliber. We just sent them out to everybody, right? Like, here's a published comic that we did. These guys are going out of business. Here are photocopies of like the next 4 issues, because we just kept working, right? We were just making a comic, and that's when Malibu reached out to us and said, "Hey, we want to do your comic." So
cool.
Yeah.
Did they give you any Any specific reason? Like, what did they like about the comic book when they greenlit
I
it?
think, to be honest with you, I think they liked that it was done.
Oh. Hey, that's always a good thing.
I mean, if that's just me being honest and looking back on it, I think they liked that it was done.
That's always a good practice anyway. You always want to finish your book first.
Yeah, because we had by that time we had 4 or 5 completed issues, and so so they knew they could start soliciting, and they had 5 months worth of content that would not be late.
Right.
And we I think during our run we did 18 issues of Cat and Mouse. I think during our run we had 1 skip month. We just said, hey, look, we need a breather.
Hyper Potato says, for the record, Roland is the man.
What's up, Piper? So yeah, we needed. I can't remember which month that was. It was in the later part of the run, yeah, we did Cat and Mouse was a monthly series when it came out, and we were what is it, pumping on all engines, man.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So you did 16 or 18 issues?
18, yeah.
18.
And I always make the argument it was actually 19 because number one, what Malibu did is they took the issue that had been published in color, number one, and they took what we had as number 2 and they combined them together. So if you find the Air Cell number 1, which I think I have right here, if you find the Air Cell number 1, then what you've got is actually I do have it right here. So this is the Air Cell number 1 right here, and it's a you can see it's got a flat spine there. That's a Paul Galassi cover, but this is actually 2 issues, so you get halfway into here, and
I think I would count that as 19 issue run.
Yeah, I have been. I have been. I thought I might have had the first issue in here too.
That's a real nice cover, by the way.
Man, it is. It really is.
They told us we had Paul Galassi, and I'm like, what? How did you manage that? They're like, we know people. I don't have the first issue in color in here. This is my reference box that I never can. I like to tell you I can remember everything that I've written, but people said, "Oh, you wrote this." I'm like, "Are you sure?" They're like, "Yeah." I don't have the number 1, the color number 1. It was published by EF Graphics, but then this is the one that followed. So, yeah.
Nice. And did you get to finish telling your story, or did they stop you before you got to finish?
Well, so long story short, I got to wrap the series up. Okay. Comics always start first issues here, and then it always drops, right? We had seen a drop, but then we'd seen a little bit of a bounce because Comic Shop News was very good to us. I don't know if y'all know Comic Shop News.
Oh yeah.
We were in Cat and Mouse was in the top 10 black and white comics for about half of the run. The highest I recall us making it was number 4, which I was super stoked about. Right, you open up a Comic Shop News and there's Cat and Mouse number 4. Top 10 black and white comic, and so I was excited. So we got a little bounce, right? We dropped and then we bounced back up. But I think Malibu thought we could get numbers higher, and so what they did is they canceled it, and they were going to go to a series of miniseries, right? So we already had the contract for the next series done. We were going to end it at 18. Part of the reason it didn't happen beyond that is Mitch and I really couldn't agree on where we wanted the series to go, and so we spent the last few issues kind of arguing about no, do this, no, do this, no, do that, right? Sometimes I'd write a story and I'd get the artwork back and I would go, what's going on here? Well, I don't understand what's happening, right? And I'd go look at my script and I'm like, that's not anywhere in the script, right? Yeah. So I was writing stories that he didn't really want to draw. It was just we had different ideas as to where the stories should go.
Right.
We went from there to do a Miss Fury miniseries, and then we were going to come back and do the next Cat and Mouse miniseries, but he just decided he didn't want to have anything to do with it. So, yeah.
So what was your next project after that?
After Cat and Mouse,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was Miss Fury.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and look. But I did Miss Fury, I did Arrow, which you had, and I did Rocket Ranger, all right about the same time.
Okay.
Roughly. I can't remember, but I don't remember exactly which one came next. I do have a journal somewhere I could probably check to to figure that out.
Yeah.
But I was I also did one that and I know this is live. I also did one that I don't generally tell people about. It's called She Devils on Wheels. When you're a freelancer, right? You could do anything.
Right.
And so I had established a good relationship with Malibu at this point in time, and Tom Mason was the guy that I dealt with, and I would call Tom up. Hey, Tom, man, you got anything else? I will tell you that Tom's stock answer was always no. I don't have anything for you, right? Fortunately for me, it wasn't unusual that he would answer that and then call me back the next day or two. He goes, "Hey, I got this thing, right?" And that's what happened. I called up and said, "Hey, Tom, I could use another project. You got anything?" He goes, "No, I don't have anything for you." Well, the next day he called back up. He goes, "Hey," he goes, "I've got this really bad movie that we have the rights to, and we're going to do an adaptation of it." He goes, "You want to do it?" I'm like, "Sure." And so I did an adaptation of the 1968 Herschel Gordon Lewis movie, She Devils on Wheels. Oh my gosh, it's so bad.
I think the title says it all.
Yeah. It really does. But yeah, I wrote a 3-issue adaptation of that. And so the funny thing to that, right, is a few months later, Tom reaches back out to me. He says, "Hey, you want to write another She Devil story?" I said, "Oh my gosh, you mean they did another movie?" He goes, No, you can make this one up."
Oh,
I
nice.
said, "Okay." I said, "So can I kill any of the characters?" He goes, "Yeah, I wouldn't do that," because he goes, "The movie's based off of a real all-female motorcycle gang in Florida." He goes, "And if you kill some of them, they'll hunt you down and find you."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I won't kill any of them then." So yeah.
What was your follow-up project after that?
Probably Cray. I had done when Stephen and I were roommates. We talked about a lot of different projects, and of course, all the artists like to draw barbarians, right? They all like to draw Conan just because it's a big dude with the sword, right?
Yeah.
And so I liked Conan, but I was never just a huge fan. But I had this from my junior college days. Actually, I had this idea of this. I was inspired by classic science fiction with the character, and I can't give too much away because I still have a hope to someday tell that second story, which I never have got the chance to do. But Cray is a barbarian set in a world of humans and mutants, and the mutants are never explained in my original story, although there are hints as to like what's going on. But ultimately, he's raised with mutants, and as a family of mutants, and he wants to join the Red Guard, which is the Delta Force of the humans. Only finds out that the High Priestess, who controls all of the Red Guard, hates mutants and she wants them all dead. And so he has to decide whether he's going to go kill muties or whether he's going to leave. Only you can't leave the Red Guard. So that's what we did. Stephen and I worked on that next, and I think right after that we did Vortex miniseries. Are you familiar with the Elementals? Oh my gosh, you've got to read the Element. You can find them in the back in the dollar boxes.
Gotcha.
I mean, I highly recommend the Bill Willingham, the guy who wrote Fables.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
This was some of his. I don't know if it was his very first work, but Elementals ran for probably 70, 80 issues, something like
Oh
that.
wow, that's a good
Oh
run.
yeah. Oh yeah, really, really good. One of the, in my opinion, one of the strongest independent comics of the 80s. It ran kind of concurrently with like Nexus and Badger from Mike
Okay.
Baron.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Highly recommend it. You guys need to check it out.
Okay.
Like I said, you can find them in the cheap boxes now, which is a
Yeah.
shame, but yeah.
Yeah. Was there ever an issue 2? Because I only ever see issue 1.
No, that was just a one shot.
Okay.
Yep. They had Malibu. So Arrow was part of the Protectors, and
Right.
R.A. Jones had been working on the Protectors.
I got those right here.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. Oh,
nice.
you got the bullet hole issue too.
Yeah, I've got. I actually bought these off RA.
Did you
'cause-
really?
Yeah, he lives here in Tulsa.
Of course he does. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I always see him at conventions, and I got to talking to him one day, and I was like, you know what, I'll take that whole run. So he sold me all 6 issues.
Nice. Well,
Oh,
that
dude,
actually
that's
ran
rad.
for like 18 issues, dude.
Yeah, and then that's the bullet hole.
Yeah, the bullet hole issue. I think that was the first when Malibu hired me, the first one they gave me was Airman, right? Which was a mess. And I can just remember Chris Olm handed me a stack of artwork, and he said, "Fix this." I was like, oh. And of course, I asked him. I said, "Can I have it redrawn?" He goes, "No, you can't have it redrawn." He goes, "Fix it." I'm like, okay. But then Protectors 5 was I think my first issue of the Protectors to edit,
Okay.
and it was already drawn. So they came to me and they said, we're gonna put a hole all the way through it. I'm like, but it's lettered. Yeah, and they're like, yeah, we need you to measure it and move any words that might get
wow.
get chopped up. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Man.
So and of course, we're working on deadline because we gotta get it printed and out there, and then Protectors was we still had a newsstand copy and a direct market copy, right? So the newsstand, of course, had the UPC code in it, and then the direct market just had an image in it. I don't remember what was in it particular.
Hey, Dio. Thanks for watching.
So Dionysus.
Yep. So yeah, I had to prep 2 covers, and for I don't remember. I don't remember if it was the entire run, but it was most of the run, where you can find 2 different versions of the covers.
Okay.
But yeah, that was so when we got to do the ferret. Now the ferret, if you remember, was completely die cut all the way around the cover.
Yeah.
We actually got the plan for that. So when they told us what we were going to do, I said, well, let's prep. So I got Dean Zachary. He drew the cover, right? And then he, based on his cover, he took that and used that as a template to draw the pages. So he
okay.
he did that, and then of course he flipped it to be on the other side. So he did his template. So he drew all the pages so they could actually fit the die cut.
Well, that's
Wow,
good.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we got the plan for that one. So that one was far easier to do than the
Right.
bullet hole.
What was the feedback from readers with the die cut? I never seen a die cut comic book. I think in all the years that I've been reading comic books. So how was that? How was the reaction for that?
It was, this was the 90s, so all the gimmicks were the rage, and folks loved it. Yeah, they enjoyed it quite a bit. So they were like, "What's next for you guys?" Of course, then we went to Malibu, ended up doing holograms and things like
Right.
that. So yeah,
That's cool.
but no, the fan reaction was very positive.
Awesome. And you mentioned that you started editing a few things. Now, did you at that point find yourself enjoying editing more, or was it more of a chore and you prefer to write, or is it which is which of the two, I guess, is the most fun for you?
Yeah, that's an easy answer. So I found out. So I kind of started editing by chance. What happened is once I made my connections with Malibu, I'm from Mississippi, so I started doing shows in Texas, and which is where I met RA. Texas and Louisiana and Arkansas and Tennessee and Alabama, just kind of in that. Dragon Con was over in Georgia, kind of in that put a pin in your location, then draw a
Right.
circle. I can drive there, right?
Yeah.
So I got to meet a lot of talented creators, and this was the 80s at the time, and no one really wanted to. I shouldn't say no one, but we didn't want to move to New York City at the time. That was kind of the if you want to work in comics, you got to move to New York City because that's where Marvel and DC are.
Right.
Well, I didn't. I wanted to make comics, but I didn't want to live in New York City. I wanted to stay where I was and make comics and not move to. There you go. Completely die cut.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh, dude, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I need to find that issue now.
Yeah.
I have to find that issue now.
Well, look at that. So you can see that when you 290 was it 299. So
Nice.
this is one of those. And so there's two versions of that as well. There's this version here, and then there's the version where the ferret, the logo, is in green foil.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Wow. So each page was drawn with that.
Yes.
That die cut. Okay.
Yep. It was Dean, who was a penciler of the story. Dean drew a template for himself, so that all the pages would conform to the die cut.
That's so rad.
Yeah,
I love that.
Cool.
I don't know why I like that so much.
Yeah. Oh, it's pretty cool. And that's another one that, again, you can find most of those books in the cheap boxes, and I think probably part of the reason is that they books tend to be valuable if they keep going, and because those series were canceled, they don't really hold a lot of value, at least not to my knowledge anyway.
Gotcha.
Yeah, also I think part of it too is the amount of people who start to hype it up. I've noticed.
Yeah.
I remember a few months ago a cover, an old Captain America cover. It's the one with the Hulk punching Captain America and he's blocking it with the shield.
Yeah.
And that went viral, right? The picture went viral and in the comic book sphere, in the comic book sphere, right?
Sure.
So I went to my shop thinking, maybe I'll try to look for that cover.
Sure.
I like the cover. So I looked at it. I was looking, and they had it, but they wanted $15 for it. And I was like, why this one and not the other ones before and after it?
Yeah, the ones before and after are like $2 or $3.
Yeah, like $2
right?
or $3.
Yeah.
But that one specifically was $15. And I was like, okay, so maybe that's why I figured, because like why else? Because the guy who prices it, he's obviously linked into the social media sphere as well.
Right.
So he probably saw one like, oh, okay, maybe someone's gonna come look for us. So
yeah,
pulls out his price gun.
$15.
Here we go.
Right.
And sure enough, the sucker me went in there and went like, all right, I guess I'll take it. And I took it.
You're like, yeah, okay, I want it, right? Yeah. Yeah. So I started
the 80s editing. Yeah.
And so I just started putting teams together, and I would work with the writer to come up with because by then I had already had some experience working with them, and so I'd meet these writers like a novelist from Louisiana, that a guy that I really liked. I'm like, hey, why don't you come write a comic? We got an artist over here. We'll hook you guys up. I found out that I was kind of editing anyway, and I didn't really realize that that's what I was doing. So when Malibu grew, one of the things that happened is I noticed that I began to get a little bit less work, right? And so one of these times in Dragon Con, I asked Chris Olm, I said, hey, I noticed that, I haven't been getting quite as much work from you guys lately. I said, is there a reason? Do I suddenly suck? What's going on? He goes, no. He goes, we're cutting back on our freelancers. He said, because we're gonna start a bullpen like what Marvel has, and I'm like, whoa. I want to be part of that, right? And he goes, wait. He goes, you want to move to California? I'm like, not really, but give me the opportunity, right? If this is if I'm going to lose work, and then this is an opportunity to come work in a atmosphere like Marvel has,
right?
Certainly in the glory days. I'm like, yeah. About a month later, he called me up and offered me a job.
Nice.
And said, I want you to come out here and be an editor. Out here being in California. And so I talked it over with my wife, and I said, all right, well, look, we came up with a bottom figure. It's like They have to offer me at least this much for me to be able to afford to
Right.
go out there, and that's what they offered me. So, so I did. She was still in graduate school. She had a few more months left to go to finish her degree. So I moved out to California, slept on Chris Olm's couch for a while, probably for a month and a half before I went to. I moved in the apartment with a guy by the name of Alan Payne, who was our marketing guy, and until she was able to finish graduate school and move out there. And then, all that. This is a long-winded way to say I much prefer writing, but I found out that I was probably a pretty good editor. That wasn't something, I wasn't in college saying I'm going to go be an editor,
Right.
Like, it just kind of happened. And then it took a few years looking back on it for me to say, I guess I was a pretty good editor. One of the things that we did, and I'm not going to call out any name because I love all the guys that I worked with, right? Toward the end of his tenure there, a guy by the name of Dan Danko, who was an editor, put together a list of the Ultraverse titles that we had. And because, we had, if you ship your books late, if you miss your deadlines for Diamond, retailers can cancel their orders, right? So you... And in the direct market, right, you're counting on those orders for your print runs, right? In the newsstand, you're just like, somebody buy them, please, right? But in the direct market, you're counting on the orders that come in. And so if you miss those, that your ship date, and there's a little bit of a buffer, but if you miss your by so long, then retailers can say, nah, I don't want that many. I realize I ordered 50, but I just want 10. Right. And so you've already printed them at that point in time. So you're stuck with losses. Right. So Dan Danko put together a list. I've got it printed out here somewhere, but I had I was the editor at Malibu that had the best on-time shipping record. I didn't ship any. None of the books under my purview ship late. None of them were returnable that way. So I had the least losses. There were 3 categories. I can't remember what the third one was now, but he had 3 categories. He looked at all the editors. There were about 6 editors there at Malibu, and he looked at all the editors and kind of broke them down. Here's what this editor is. Here's what this editor is. And Roland, 0. And I'm like, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and he included, and he was a senior editor, so he included him. It's not like he was trying to, he wasn't. He was like, oh, here I've got late books, right?
Yeah.
So I always, and I kept that. That was one of those things, you're at work, like I'm printing that out and I'm keeping that. I'm sticking that in the files.
Put that in a plaque up on your wall.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So I much prefer writing, but I enjoy editing. Just not my favorite part.
Right.
So you accidentally were or are a good editor then.
Yes. Yeah. and the thing about it is, of course, I love doing. Let me see if I can have it say it. So used to, I don't get asked much anymore, but used to a few years ago, people would, hey, I need an editor. Will you edit me? And like, no, I don't want to. And there's a couple of reasons, all right? So when you're employed by a corporate entity, right?
Right.
You're the boss, right? The corporate entity says, here's our character. You take care of this character, right? You protect the character. You're the boss, right?
Right.
When an indie comic person hires you, they're the boss.
Right.
Right. And so you can tell them, oh man, this stinks right here. I want that in there. Why do you want that in there? Well, it's because he's got this line here. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not that good a line anyway. And you can just save it and use the line later. But this scene doesn't advance your story or anything. Yeah, but I want it in there. And you're like,
yeah, and you're pretty much talking to a brick wall at that point, right?
yeah. I mean, and I get it, right? As a creator myself, I get it. Sometimes I'm like, no, I want that in there. That's because I think it's cool, right?
Right.
Well, it doesn't advance your story any, but So I did a couple, like I said, several years ago, and then just decided the frustration, because there's not much money, in freelance editing like that. And so I'm like, it's not worth my time. I would rather edit something for Silverline, which, which means it's something I've chosen. It's a writer that I've chosen to work with,
Right.
and like that.
So tell us a little bit about Silverline. How did that start? Where's it going?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that second part. So Silverline has a long history. So recall that I said I became a freelance editor, and I didn't really realize it before Malibu hired me. Well, so what we started to do is we put together what was a packaging company, right? And that just meant that we would deliver a complete book to the publishers. And we did, most of the stuff we did was for Malibu. We did some things for Caliber Press as well. But like I said, I would meet an artist, I'd meet a writer, and we'd say, hey, we'll hook you two guys together and we'll make a comic book and we'll submit it, right? And then I took care of all that because I had the contacts, right? I knew the folks at Malibu, I knew the folks at Caliber. So it was a way for these freelancers, these creators that I knew, that I had met, that were kind of local to me, said Alabama, Louisiana, that kind of thing. And they didn't have to have those contacts because I was, I did it. So I have to back up just a little bit, because the name Silverline has a meaning. Okay. So Steven and I are, we're big fans of the Silver Age of comics, right? The Kirby stuff, Marvel from 60s to the 80s to me is just, that's just gold right there. And so when we went to, we tried to self-publish. When we went to the company, EF Graphics, a company out of New York, they were already doing Jazz Age Chronicles, and we had a line of comics that we wanted. It wasn't just cat and mouse, but we had like three or four titles that we wanted them to do. And they said, well, we want to differentiate you from the Jazz Age Chronicles. And I think they had another one they were doing. I can't remember that, though. They said, okay, well, why don't we be like a separate line? And so Steven and I talked about it. It's like, what do we want to do? What do we want to capture? Like, well, ultimately, we want to capture the Silver Age. We don't want to be Silver Age comics, right? Obviously, because those are different now, and certainly they're dated today. But we want to capture the spirit that the Silver Age had, and so it just kind of, we're like, hey, we want to be the Silverline, right? So we became Silverline through EF Graphics, right? It was a EF Graphics publication. It was a Silverline, right? And when that fell apart, we said, hey, we're packaging this stuff. We'll just use Silverline as our packager, right? And so if you look at the books that we packaged back in the time, you'll see that it has, so often it's on the inside front cover, maybe even the indicia. I'd have to go back and look at some of them, but Silverline is indicated on there that basically is me and Steven. And Silverline just kind of went away when Malibu hired me. And then just because Steven went to draw, for First Comics, and I went to work for Malibu, and so there was just like, okay, but no reason for it. We didn't say, okay, we're done, right? We just kind of stopped. So fast forward, Marvel buys Malibu. Marvel goes public. Marvel buys Malibu. Marvel declares bankruptcy. Marvel fires a whole bunch of people. Marvel shuts down Malibu, right? Well, a year later, I decided, hey, I know how to do this now. I can probably go to the bank and get me a loan, right, to print comics now, because I know how to do it. Also, I own my own car, own 2 cars now if I need collateral. And so I decided that I would go into publishing at that time to the small press. And it was just a natural thing that I used Silverline, right? So from 97 to early 2001, I published 13 books under Silverline. Lost a lot of money because that was when the crash happened, right? And I lost a lot of money. And my wife said, if you want to stay married, you need to stop losing money. And I said, okay. So I stopped, and I went back to school. I stopped comics altogether at that point in time. And I went back to school, got a degree, started teaching, which is what I do for a day job now. And then a few years ago, I stumbled upon, I guess it's more like 12 years ago now. I stumbled upon, one of my all-time favorite novels is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, which is something I discovered right when my mom was still getting me to read, right? And I used that in my classroom in the English comp, right? I used that in the classroom. And so I was on the internet searching for questions that I could ask my students to prove that they read the book and not just the Cliff Notes version, right? And I stumbled upon a website that was looking for someone to do an adaptation, a comic book adaptation of the novel. And I'm like, oh man, that would be fun, right? And it'd been, 10 years since I'd done anything. That would be fun. I know how to do that. I can write that. And Huckleberry Finn's one of my favorite books. So I really didn't do a whole lot of prep work. I just fixed up my resume a little bit, attached it, and sent them an email. 24 hours, they got me. Okay, you got the job. What?
Wow. Nice.
Really? It's like, okay. And so they sent me all their guidelines, and so I knocked that out. I'm like, that was fun. I'm like, you have any more? And they're like, yeah. What about here's a list. They sent me a list, right? And so it was published by Campfire, which is an Indian company. And what they were doing is they were apparently literacy is a big issue in India. I don't know that much about it other than what they said. And so what they were doing is this was a car company that had lots of money. And so they were taking classic public domain, classic works, doing adaptations of them and trying to get them out into the hands of kids to try to encourage them.
Oh, nice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's very,
cool.
very, very, very cool thing. So they sent me this list of all this. There's so many things on there I wanted to do, but I'm like, how about the Wizard of Oz? Let me do the Wizard of Oz.
Cool.
Everyone knows that one, right?
Yeah,
That's one So I got to do the adaptation of the Wizard of Oz. Well, that led to me being a contract editor for them. And so I was editing some of, because they didn't know what they were doing, right? It was a car company, right? They're like, hey, we got money, let's make comic books, And some of the scripts that they had gotten, they were like, we're going to show you this script. Can you tell us what the problems are? And I'm like, yeah, this is a bad script, right? And so when I say bad script, so one of the problems that you can find in a lot of scripts is that there are multiple actions happening in a panel.
Right. Oh,
right?
yeah.
Now, you guys know that, right? For those of you who are listening who might not know, it's like, you got one panel, it's one image. So Johnny can't enter the door, drop his keys, pick up his phone, and fire the gun in one panel, right? It's just not possible. And the scripts that they were sending me were just full of this. And so their artists were like, oh, well, what do you want me to draw, right? And so I did contract work with them for about 10 months until and I was getting ready. They were getting ready to have this big launch party in India. And I didn't even have a passport or anything. So I went out and got a passport. And the person that I dealt with flew to the United States. Howard Mackey was doing some work for them as well, right? So I flew up to Philadelphia, and I met with me and this person from India and Howard Mackey. We all had a meeting about where so while she was over here, right, they fired her.
Oh, wow.
They fired her, right? So I called and I didn't find this out until she went back, right? But she went back and said, "Oh, I no longer work for them." I'm like, "Okay, well, what does that do for me and the agreement that we have?" And so what happened is they ended up hiring somebody who kind of knew somebody from England who kind of knew what he was doing, and they just got rid of everybody, right? Oh yeah, we're going to do it on our own now. Campfire's still around. They still produce a lot of stuff. The interesting thing is I've seen, I don't own one, but I have seen internet images of the books that I did in Hindi. right? So there's the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and it's all in Hindi on the cover. I can't read any of it, but it's all in Hindi, right?
Right.
And that's kind of cool. I kind of like to have like one copy of that.
Yeah.
Just to say,
They didn't give you
know,
no, they didn't ship you no comp copies, nothing?
No, no. And so here's another funny thing about them. Most publishers will offer you as the creator the wholesale count. It's like, hey, you want to buy copies from us? We'll sell it to you at the wholesale, wholesale rate. I asked Campfire to do that, and they said, nope, you've got to order them through the stores. What? Like, I wrote it. I got to go out and pay them out. Yeah, I don't know. So I've actually found, don't tell them. I actually found a distributor in the United States that would sell them to me at wholesale. So
nice.
Yeah. So, but I kind of stopped buying them because I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't make that much money off of, because it's not the wholesale to the retailer. It's not that much money, and so I think the last time I did a show, I don't have any more copies of Wizard of Oz, but I have one copy of Huckleberry Finn left. And so once that one's gone, I won't do that one anymore. I told y'all I like to talk.
No, you're good.
No, that's great. I love hearing these stories.
So the question.
Don't forget
the question
was, thank you, Hyper.
Hey, Hyper. So anyway, so that was that. I rediscovered my love for comics. Essentially, yeah, I do like making comics. This is fun. I was learning about, of course, the internet was around. I was learning about Kickstarter. I was learning about print on demand. Both of which I believe changed the industry. Right?
Yeah.
It basically opened the doors that it had kept closed for decades.
Yeah.
And so a few years later, I went ahead and put together my first Kickstarter. It failed, right? But I'm like, okay, cool. I see what this is now, right? And I reached out to two Kickstarter people who are rocking it. They're rocking it now. But are friends of mine. I reached out to Jimmy Palmiotti and I reached out to Brian Polito, and I say, look, I want to do this Kickstarter thing. What can you do to help me? And so they both gave me some very good feedback. And then the next Kickstarter I launched, it was successful. I did a book called Tiny, which was a loose adaptation of Thumbelina. It did real well. And so I reached out to some comic book people that I had, known from back in the day and said, hey, I want to make comic books again. You want to make some comics? And so we started making comics. Now, Silverline wasn't part of it at the time. This would have been probably 2017, 18, something like that. 17, I guess, because Tiny was 2015. And then around 2019, they're like, hey, you should start Silverline back again. And I was like, I lost a lot of money that first time.
Yeah.
And, it took me years to pay that stuff off. And that's a lot of work. I got a full-time job now, and I don't think so. And so they kind of kept harping on me and wore me down. And so I'm like, okay, well, I like comics. I enjoy doing this. This is something I would do on my spare time anyway. And they volunteered to help, right? So one of them was Barb Kalberg, and Barb was an inker that we had hired at Malibu. She did a whole bunch of stuff for us at Malibu. And she said, look, my day job for the last, 20 or 30 years has been an accountant, a bookkeeper. She goes, I'll keep all the books for you. I said, that would be great because I hate math. So Barb does, right? I spend something. If I spend money, I'll say, all right, here's the receipt and here's what it was for. And I send it to her. She keeps all the books. And sometimes she'll, I'll buy boxes or something and she'll say, hey, no more boxes for this month, right?
Oh, nice.
Hyper says, just in case you don't know, Roland and Silverline put out some great comics and always fulfilled.
Ooh, there you go.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Hyper. I appreciate you. Yeah, so that is something that we say. But at this point in time, we've run 30 campaigns, and we've never shipped late.
Nice.
We've fulfilled 100% on time. I have had 3 single packages that were late because I was waiting on artwork from Argentina, and this was during COVID. So all of the, the shipping and postal service was all messed up. I reached out to the people who had artwork and I said, hey, look, right, I've fulfilled everything except for yours, and I'm waiting on artwork. Is it okay with you? I've got your books here, right? Your books are here. With your permission, I'd like to wait so that I don't have to double ship to you. I will if you want me to, but I would like to wait on the on the artwork.
Hey, Jolly.
Hey, what's up? And they were all very, all of them were very generous and said, no, you can wait on the artwork and then just ship it all to me at once. And so, so that's the only time we've been late on anything. So I'm pretty proud of that fact, especially.
Yeah.
I know you guys know, right? There's a whole bunch of late fulfillment campaigns and.
I'm guilty of 2 of them right now.
Oh no! Oh wait, you yourself or you back?
Oh, me myself, yeah.
Oh,
for 2 of them. Oh, yeah, I know. I stop myself every day,
Good for you.
Again, it's because of things out of my control. There's the factor of the artist who decided to change his style halfway through producing.
Oh my gosh!
But it worked out for the better. Thankfully, we have some gracious backers who are willing to wait for it.
Yeah.
And then on the other project that I have, the colorist who was recoloring 8 pages that I needed to recolor because they weren't really good, and I want to give him the backers the best pages.
Right.
He went radio silent on me for because I hired him in the beginning when I launched it because I thought 8 pages. What's 8 pages? I'll have that done before when the campaign's done. And
easy breezy.
Yeah, he went radio silent on me, and he's never done that to me before. And I've worked with him in the past.
Wow.
And then finally he got back to me and said, I'm sorry, I had some family issues. I should have reached out to you. I'm sorry. I'm gonna work on your pages. And finally he gave me 4 pages. So I'm still waiting on 4 more. But after that, off the printers we go and film it. So
nice. Well, one of the you mentioned there, that's to me, I think that's one of the key things, whether you're a creator communicating with your backers, or whether you're just a creator communicating with other creators, communication, right? If you keep your backers appraised of what's going on, if you never send them a message, they're going to say, "Oh, great, they took my money." And
right.
But if you're like, "Okay, look, I know I sent you out an update last week, but here's what's happened this week," right? I just want to keep you guys posted. Most of the times, I think anyway, the backers are going to go, "Cool, right? Yeah,
right.
Be posted. Yeah. I know what's going on. You didn't get it. Yeah, okay, you're late, but you're talking to me. You're letting me know. You're giving me updates, right?" I think most of your backers are going to be cool. But if you go radio silent, they're going to dude took my money.
Yeah.
And,
No, absolutely. Yeah. There's a few campaigns that I backed that I haven't never got my book. And
I'm waiting on probably about 6 of them myself.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is there's 2 of them are from big name creators, and I'm like, what the heck? Why are you guys doing it? You guys know better.
Right.
It's like maybe you just know how to make the book, but you don't know how to run a campaign and do all the other, and again, I kind of think about it as like, go ahead. I love Hyper. Go ahead and read what.
Yeah, I was gonna say communication is always key. I definitely understand things happen, but if you go radio silent, I assume I've been robbed. Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. Hyper's good people. Hyper's a big supporter of independent. You guys probably know him too. He's a big supporter of independent comics. And awesome. those are my favorite people.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to ask you, as an editor looking out at the indie field of comic books, like you were just talking about, aside from communication, what other ways can indie creators get better?
Tell a story, right? So there's a couple of things, and I pretty much all I buy is independent comic books today, right? So I read a lot of independent comics. I don't buy, even though I was a Marvel zombie as a kid, I don't buy new Marvel or DC comics. Take that for whatever you want. I buy them in the back issue boxes, all right? I still buy them when the classics. Again, Bronze Age, Silver Age, I'm there. So there's a couple of things, right? And I blame the influence of film and TV on it, right? I read an independent comic book one time. I read the entire thing, front to finish. I had no idea what the name of the main character was.
Oof.
He was never called by name at all anywhere in the story, right? And I hear, I talk to some writers, yeah, but I don't want to do what Chris Claremont did and said, Wolverine, he's the best he is at what he does, and what he does is very nice. I said, that's fine. You don't have to do that. But when he enters a scene, the other person could go, hey, Johnny, how's it going? I haven't seen you in a long time. Sally, good to see you, I mean, they have to call each other by name. And they should do it regularly in the comic. Yeah, but people don't talk that way. But you're not writing people. You're writing comics. You're writing, this is entertainment, right? So the difference is you're not writing real people. You're writing entertainment people. And so there are things that you have to adjust in your writing. Another thing is transitions, right? Setting the scene and transitions. How many times have you read the comic and go, where are we? I don't know where. And again, it's like they're afraid to put a caption that says, New York, Soho, right? I mean, as a kid, I had no idea where Soho was, but Spider-Man was there. And if he was in Soho, cool. I know where Spider-Man is, right?
Right.
And then when you go from one scene to the other, and the argument is that, well, the reader's going to tell that the artwork has changed. No, they're not. Tell them. Meanwhile, over here at this office, or 13 minutes later, John's office.
Right.
That it does not distract from the reading enjoyment of that, and that's something I hear frequently say, but that gets in the way. No, it doesn't. No, comics have been that way for a long time. It actually helps the reader understand, right? I find in my class I tell my students that, because I teach writing, right? And so I tell them, if the reader is confused, stop, because a lot of them want to blame the reader. Well, they just don't get what I'm trying to do. It's like, no. You're not communicating what you're trying to communicate. You think you are, but if the reader said, I'm confused, that's your fault as the writer. That's not their fault, right? The other issue is figuring out how to tell a story. There are times I've read the complete thing, and I'm like, well, the story's not finished, or you didn't really tell me a story. That was a nice scene, right? I read the whole comic. I said that was a fun scene, but it wasn't really a story, right? And I think a lot of independent writers, and again, this is you asked me kind of what the problem is. It's not for all of them, okay? So there's some really good independent comics out there. But you have to have a character that has to have a protagonist, right? That has to have some kind of goal that they're working towards, and they either fail the goal or they succeed in the goal. But I need, when the story's over, and that could be 3 issues, 4 issues, whatever, right? If you're telling a miniseries. But now if I buy a graphic novel from you, if I buy a graphic novel length work from you and the story's not finished, I'm mad. I mean, it's like, why? And it's not that you can't leave, some plot threads dangling to bring me over. But if you're going to get me to buy a graphic novel length work, right, 60 pages, 70 pages, something, tell a story. Tell a complete story from beginning to middle and end, right? So that way, when I close the book, I'm like, I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder what happened to this dangling plot thread that they left. I'm interested in buying the next one, right?
Right.
But if I get 0 answers, I'm not coming back.
That's fair.
Yeah. In a nutshell, I think for me, that's probably some of the biggest problems I've seen. And that's with the storytelling. I tend to be a little more generous on the artwork because there's so varied, right? There's so many different kinds of styles even that you can have. So I tend to be a little more, lenient, generous. I don't know, whatever you want to say for the artwork, but yeah, I come down on the story sometimes. I shouldn't say would never, but I try not to ever do like say, oh, this is a horrible thing here, right? and call it out on public. And
Right.
I wouldn't. That's not who I am. I'd rather talk about the things that are good, the things that I like, rather than point out things that fail. But I do see a lot of that in independent. The things that we talked about, I see a lot of that in independent comics. You guys agree or disagree?
No, that's pretty much all across. Yeah, I mean that's what I've noticed, and I personally made an effort to like you go back and pick up old issues so I could study them and see what they did right, how they used to do things back then. I picked up. I recently discovered. I know, shame on me. Mark Grunwald's work.
Oh, yeah, he's a great writer.
Yeah, and I was like, well, I need to start buying his books. I need to start seeing, what so I started picking up his Captain America.
Captain America, of course. Yeah.
And the first issue my comic shop had it in the bin was the famous Mike Zeck cover with Captain America shooting the Uzi.
Oh yeah.
So I got that. I picked that up and I read it, and I just couldn't believe. I was like, wow, back then you guys were so spoiled back then because you guys got an entire great compelling story within one issue.
Right.
And I remember when by the end of it I was like, dude, this is like now in today's market, today's modern storytelling in the mainstream, is that short story, that little one issue story of Captain America saving the passengers who were kidnapped by the villain, that would have been spread out three or four issues.
Oh man, I know.
And this was so well. It wasn't dense. It wasn't like oh, they're cramming so much. It was perfectly done within the I think it was 28 pages. I think if I remember correctly, for 75 cents.
Yeah.
For 75 cents, you guys got good stuff.
Yeah, of course, 75 cents wasn't quite what it is it's not quite the same today as yesterday.
Right.
But I think here's a lesson that you can take from that. All right. So if you look at a lot of modern comics today, right? So you even talking about the Mark Grunwald stuff, there's nothing in, I shouldn't say nothing, but there's very little in the Mark Grunwald story that doesn't advance the story. Right. There's not a lot of fluff. You read a lot of the independent comics today, and you can read 2 or 3 pages and say, this serves no purpose. Right.
Yeah, right.
And I'll tell you something else that I think independent comics are they love to do. Pages that have no dialogue on them. Cut them. If you got no words on it, look, I stopped reading picture books when I was 4. Right? So don't give me a picture. I'm not spending my money to look at pictures. If I want to look at pictures, I'll go buy a John Buscema art book. If you've got 2 panels, this is my opinion here. If you got 2 panels side by side, neither one of them have dialogue in them, one of them should be cut. I do think sometimes you can have a silent panel, but that silent panel has to scream, right? It can't just be a picture of somebody putting a key in a door. Okay, look, they entered. I know they used the key to get in the door, right? I don't have to see all of these things. And I think that's one of the problems is there's so many of these little things that we don't need to see that the independent creators are showing us again. And I think it comes from TV because they're seeing, oh, I'm seeing the movie in my head. I'm like, well, stop.
Yeah.
Comic book.
Right.
See the comic book in your head, not the TV show, right? That's a great find, man. That's absolutely.
And I also picked up the stuff he did with Roland Mann. I forgot the name of the story arc, but it's the one with he faces off against Bullseye.
Oh yeah.
I think it was the Vengeance story arc that he did with Roland Mann. I haven't read. I have them, but I haven't read. I haven't had a chance to read them yet.
It's been years since I've read them, but it's been years since I've read them.
Mark Grunwald is definitely someone now that I definitely have to pick up and study. Outside of the big names like Frank Miller and Alan Moore and all those people, but now I'm starting to find the I don't like to use the B writers because I don't see them as B writers. I just other writers who are not who are not recognized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ones who aren't the rock stars.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
exactly.
No, I think so. And there's a bunch of those out there, like J.M. DeMatteis, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Fantastic writer. But there's another thing that you said about the Captain America thing. You said in this one issue he fought the villain and saved the people, right?
Yeah.
There's your story right there.
Yeah.
Okay. That's remember I said you got to have a protagonist that has a goal. Captain America's goal is to save the people. To save the people, he's got to fight the villain, right? Boom. That's your story. That's like
a great story too.
It doesn't have to be complicated.
It's the way he did it too. It's the way he delivered it as well. That worked. That worked really well.
Yeah. Jolly has a question for Roland.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for resources, books, people to follow to learn more about editing comic books?
That's a great question. I need to put together a list. I'll tell you the two that I use in my classroom. I use the DC Guide, Comics Guide to Writing Comics by Denny O'Neil.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, of course.
Who's a fantastic writer. Yep. Yeah. And then I also use this one. You guys probably know this one.
Oh, yeah.
Scott McCloud.
Yeah, Scott McCloud. Yeah. I would also read some prose editing books.
Oh,
I can't see it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Making Comics. It's the Making Comics book.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one too. I considered that one for the class. But I wanted to use the Understanding Comics and then go with the Denny O'Neil book. Look at okay. So I'm not a Stephen King fan, but Stephen King has a book called On Writing that's really, really, really good. Now, the first half of it is all biography, so you can skip all that and get to the back half that's about it's his suggestions for writing. And it's really, really, really good because it focuses on a lot of the mistakes that writers make. I'll give you an example from the book. So one of the things that Stephen King says that young writers make the mistakes of is that they'll have a character walk into the room, and then this character will just proceed to describe everything. Okay, he said, readers don't need to know everything. Because pick out 3 things that are important to this character. Maybe the character is an architect, right? Or a designer, right? So they notice the chandeliers and the paint on the wall, right?
Right.
He said the next character that enters the room might be a cop. He notices different things. He notices the exits. He notices where people are sitting, right? And so what you're doing is you're painting a picture, and this is prose, obviously. And you're painting a picture, but the same thing is true, I think, when it goes for comics. You can apply that when you're writing your script. It's like one of the biggest, and this is particularly for writers, one of the biggest complaints I hear from artists all the time is that the writers don't give them enough. Right? The writers don't give me enough stuff. And again, I think this is a television thing. I have no proof of that, but I think this is a television thing because, people in film and television are taught not to do too much, leave that to the director. Well, in comics, the writer is the director, right? So you can't just say, he gets in a car. Well, what kind of car does he get into? The artist needs to know. Do you want him in a sports car? Do you want him in a convertible? Do you want him in a science fiction car that ain't real, right? Or do you want him in a beat up, 1940s 8 Ford pickup, right?
Yeah.
What you want. So you have to give the artist some details, and I think that's if we're digging deeper and not the published work, if we're digging deeper into what the writers are doing, is they're just not giving the artist enough details. Right? They're like, well, I'll leave that up to the artist. Well, what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to make the artist do my job. I'm going to have to, Jolly Green, I'm going to have to see if, Jolly Green, I'm going to see if I can't come up with a list. You're welcome to reach out to me and remind me that I need to come up with a list. But I'll try to come up with a list of some books that would be good for you to read. Comes to editing, of course, a lot of editing, is about writing as well.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I wonder if some of that has come from Stan Lee, the way he did comics back in the day, where he would just do a rough draft to give that to the
Yeah.
artist,
Yeah, the
and then
Marvel method.
the Marvel method.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. One of the things, I'm a big fan of the Marvel method, by the way. One of the things that happened, and a lot of people don't realize, is that
Wait, you are a fan or you're not a fan?
oh, I am a fan.
Oh, you are a fan. Okay.
Oh, I'm a huge fan. Yeah. In fact, this is my work script, and I'm working on. It's not finished for a cat and mouse one shot.
Oh,
Yeah, and this is, you can see, this is page 1. This is page 2. You can see it's a splash page.
Yeah.
Page 3, page 4 and 5 are described together here, but that's not the completed one. So 4 and 5 goes all the way over to, oh no, it does there, and then the 6, 7, 8, right?
Okay.
So a lot of people, when they're talking about the Marvel method, they're like, Stan Lee wrote a paragraph, right? That's true. But when Roy Thomas came along, Roy Thomas turned it into a page by page plot.
Okay.
So the artists were given more details for their pages. And I think some of that, I just from all the stuff that I've read, I think some of that was like Roy wanted a little more control over the story. Stan Lee was just trying to get it done, right? I mean, yeah. Stan Lee was just trying to get it done. When Roy came along, he was like, okay, we need to tell better stories. We need, as the writers, we need more control of it. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the Marvel method because you still tell your story as the writer. You can see this. I still give them details, right? I mean, there's a lot. The only thing that's not on here is the exact dialogue.
right.
And I give the artist like placeholder dialogue. They're having a conversation about this, and if I ever say, hey, this character's going to monologue, so make sure there's a panel in here that has lots of room for dialogue. I have found in my because all of Cat and Mouse was done that way, right? Although the first volume and all the issues of Cat and Mouse that I've done have been with the Marvel method. I have found that sometimes we see, and I don't. Hopefully, I haven't been I'm not guilty of it, but sometimes we see in a script a writer has written something that you can see, right? The example, of course, the classic example is we see Thor punching Hulk, and then the text says, Thor punches Hulk with a mighty blow.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I can see that, right? Tell me what I can't see. And so I think sometimes in scripts, when you write a full script, you don't see the artwork. So you're imagining what it's going to be, but the text might duplicate what the artist ends up drawing, right? Yeah. And it just happens, right? You're writing the script, you don't see the art. When you get it back and it gets lettered, you're like, oh, look what I've done, right? But when you do Marvel method, you get the artwork and you haven't written any of the words on the page yet. So if you do it Marvel method, well, then that's just, shame on you for doing that. I was like, I can see the picture before I'm writing the words.
Right.
And I'm a big fan. I think the artwork ends up to be very, very strong in the Marvel method. Again, it relates to it depends on the artist,
Yeah. Jolly has another question. When hiring an artist, what are some of the things we should be asking them up front to see if they're the right fit for the project?
Ooh, good question.
That is a great question.
Yeah,
I will tell you one of the things that I like to ask an artist. I like to ask them, what do they like to draw?
Yeah.
All right,
because
if I've got a Transformer story I want to tell, big mech monsters, and I'm talking with an artist who I'm seeing they got some really good work, but what they really want to draw is My Little Pony. They might say yes to your project, but they're going to get 5 or 6 pages in and like, man, I really want to draw My Little Pony. I don't like drawing all these mech monsters, right? And so they're going to bail on you. So have a conversation with your artist and find out what they like to draw.
Yeah.
And and if you got a really good conversation going with an artist, and you find out that they want to draw My Little Pony, and but you've been thinking about this Transformer story, but they're like, yo, I'd love to do a project with you. Don't shoehorn the Transformers project in. Write a My Little Pony story for them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're a writer, right?
Yeah.
Write a My Little Pony story for them so that they can do it. I'll let's see if I can find it in here. So this is one of the things that I did for the Tiny that I mentioned earlier. I think I have Tiny in here. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So if you had asked me prior to this project, Roland, do you think you would ever do a comic book that looks like Disney? I was like,
Oh, there you go.
I mean, look at it.
Oh, that's great.
It's called Tiny.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Look at that. That's a good cover.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic cover, right? But this is her artwork.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
That's
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, she's here's the story about this girl. Let me show you. I think the last page is just awesome too. This is the cliffhanger here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. These are a couple of really good pages here too.
Oh, yeah. That's a great sequential.
Yeah.
Great sequentials there.
So, the story behind this girl is she was a oh, look, I did find it. Here we go. Sorry, here's the EF Graphics version of Cat and Mouse.
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a great cover.
That's a nice
Yeah.
cover.
Yeah, and the difference. It was in color, right?
Okay.
Which is probably why they lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
When Malibu ended up printing it, then theirs was all in black and white.
Okay.
So anyway, so the Tiny story is that my daughter kept telling me. She said, "Hey, Dad, I've got a friend who wants to do a comic book." The thing about it is, you guys will probably hear that too all the time. It's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But and I'm ashamed to say it was my daughter, so I should have paid attention to my daughter, right? So finally, she had said this to me for several weeks, and finally she takes her phone and shoves it in my face and said, "Dad, look, she wants to make a comic." And so I looked at Deanna's artwork. I'm like, wow, she's actually pretty good, right? And so I said, well, let's have a sit down with her, right? And so I met with her and we chatted, and I said, so do you like comics? Oh, I don't really read comics. I said, so you're not really a fan? Oh, I just don't read them. So I said, you like Spider-Man or no. I mean, I know who Spider-Man is, but I just don't read comics. I'm an artist, and I think drawing a comic would be fun. Okay. I'm like, okay, cool. It's like, well, what kind of story do you want to draw? She goes, I like fairy tales. Of course, in my mind, I'm like, fairy tales? I've never written a fairy tale before. So I said, all right, well, let me go do some research. Because I'm more action, adventure, that kind of thing. Let me do some research. And so what I did is I got together 5 fairy tales that I found that I liked, and I pitched those to her and said, here you go. Here's 5 that I like. You pick out one you like. The Thumbelina, which is what this is based off, was at the bottom of my list. That's the one she wanted to do. I can't remember the name of this. I wanted to do the one where the king turns the prince into a bear, and the bear lives in the wood and in the woods, and the princess falls in love with the bear, who's a real bear, right? Then she brings the bear into the castle. I'm like, what the heck? This is a weird fairy tale. But no, she wanted to do Thumbelina. and true story.
Who's gonna hire my artist buddy Josh George first?
What does he like to draw?
That's it, right? What does he like to draw?
And also to add to your answer, what I like to do personally when I hire an artist is I send them my story pitch, and if I see genuine excitement,
right,
for them to draw it, then
right.
I got my guy or girl, depending. So.
You want them to be invested in it. You want them to be. I mean, clearly, as the writer, it's your baby, so you are going to be more excited than anyone, right? That's just a given. But you want the artist to be excited. The other thing I think, going back to the question, one of the other things I think you should find out is what kind of speed the artist is going to be working on, right? Because not all artists are the same, right? Some of them, I can only do like 1 page a week. Okay, well that's going to take you at a 20-page book. That's going to take you 22 weeks to do.
Right.
Now I got no problem with that as long as we know this going into it, right? But if you tell me I can do 3 pages a week, but you can really only do 1, then that's a problem. I don't have a problem with a page a week, right? You just got to make sure you tell me up front that that's what we're doing. I would also ask who some of their influences are, because their influences will tell you what kind of storytelling you're going to get. If they like some of the classic artists, and they don't have to love them, right? As I realize that for some people, Jack Kirby is an acquired taste. I get that. I hated Jack Kirby as a kid. I as a kid, I'm like, oh, this is horrible, terrible, blah blah.
Same here. I respect him now, but
dude, I was the same way. I didn't start appreciating him until I got older and I saw his genius when the
storytelling. What an incredible storyteller he is. Another artist I hated as a kid was Frank Robbins. Y'all know who Frank Robbins is?
I'm not familiar with
him. Look up some of the early issues of the Invaders. They all look like they were dancing on their toes. It's like they were all running. And I'm like, why are they all ballerinas, right? And it's just But yeah, find out who some of their influences are. Because if they're influenced by modern artists, and I'm talking about like the people drawing Marvel and DC today. Maybe you want to keep looking, but if they're influenced by Walter Simonson, Frank Miller's, Howard Chaykin's of the day, okay, you kind of know what you're going to be getting, right?
Yeah.
But if they're influenced by Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, that's a slightly different generation. So what kind of influence they're going to be bringing to the table. So you can talk about, give me a Jim Lee big panel 1, right? And they're probably going to understand that you mean, when you turn the page, you want that first panel to be a long panel that's got a full body shot, right?
Yeah.
Jim Lee was great at that. I think the most important question though is to find out what they like to draw.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Here's another one. Jolly with the good questions. Thanks for the good questions.
Yeah, Jolly. Well, these are fantastic questions.
Besides panels with no dialogue and too little info on the script, what are some of the other easily fixable mistakes that new writers make on scripts?
Let's see. Besides panels
I'll speak
with no dialogue.
From personal experience as when I started writing comics myself as a rookie, is the excessive amount of dialogue that you want to fit in one panel. That's one mistake. That's one mistakes that new writers make.
Yeah,
and I made them. I made them myself.
Yeah. So I used to have these numbers more solidified in my head. I think what is it, like 40 words to a panel?
I think it was something like that, yeah, to that effect.
Because Alan Moore said something like 200 words on a page. I got to call up a calculator for this. See, I told y'all I hate math. Calculator. So if you take 200 and divide it by 6, what is that? 200 divided by 6.
Look at math too, so
that's 33 words. So, I think probably anywhere between 25 to 30 words on a panel. Again, if there's no words in the panel, so my argument is this: if there's no words in a panel, you're not advancing your story. You're just showing me a picture of something, right? It does not advance the story. I think you hit on the key of silent panels and too little info in the script. Those are the biggest issues. Now that's script now, but if you want to talk story, it goes back to your protagonist. So here's an easy way to, I think, an easy way to look at your story and decide, do I have a story here? Okay. Your protagonist has to want something. Okay. There has to be a goal for your protagonist. And I say protagonist because that's your main character, right? So they've got to want something. Now, because we're making comics, they have to want something visual. So they can't say, "Oh, I wanna find love." Well, your artist is going to say, "What's that look like? How do I draw that?" Right?
Yeah.
So it's got to be something like Captain America has to save the people from the what'd you say, the bus,
Terrorist.
the
Yeah,
terrorist.
it was from the airplane, the airline.
So he has to save them from. I can see that. That's a visual thing. I can see.
Yeah.
He has to beat the terrorist, right? So you have to give your protagonist a goal. Now, that doesn't mean that you start the issue saying, "Today I'm going to stop the no." Usually the bad guy has to do something,
Yeah.
right? And then the good guy then says, "Oh, I have to go do this," right? That's when your protagonist gets their goal, right? And then, and that's kind of your first act, right? The first couple of pages. And then the bulk of your story, the middle of your story, right, is your protagonist trying to achieve that goal.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
as they're trying to achieve that goal, there are going to be obstacles, right? I got to save the airplane. Oh, but look, there's the terrorist. I have to defeat the terrorist before I can save the airplane, right? So there are obstacles to get in the way. These obstacles also need to be visual. It can't be, right? It can't be, "Oh, I think I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm going to overcome my fear of moving from there to here because it can't be internal." Now, you could do internal all day long in a novel, right? Huckleberry Finn. Huckleberry Finn's conflict. There's a lot of visual conflict as well, but he has some of the best internal conflict throughout the entire novel. It's a novel. It's not drawn, right? So your protagonist has to have a goal, right? And then there has to be conflict as they're trying to achieve that goal.
There you
And
go.
again,
Yep.
and then at the end, they either achieve the goal, yay, or they don't. Oh,
Yeah.
right? That's it. If you will look at your story and make sure you got that, then you'll find that your panels are going to have some words in it, and as long as you add some details in your script, you should be okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Those are good questions, Jolly Green.
Another one. Any suggestions on how to get your name out there as a writer, editor, or what is the best way to put together a portfolio these days with digital print comics and scripts?
Work.
Yeah, that's just as Nike says, just do it.
Yes.
And so I will say this, and there are people who would disagree with me. That's fine. So that's why we live in America, right? Jolly Green, offer your services for free. Offer your services to your pals. Say, look, I want you to list me as the editor of your book. I want to work with you. It's your book, right? But I want to practice my editing. Let me come on board with you as you create this project, right? Let me come on board with you and let me work as an editor. It's still your book. You're going to make the final decision, right? Yeah. But I want to let's treat this as if I'm the editor, and you let me work alongside with you. But part of that is I'm going to do it for free. But part of that is I want you to give me credit. Right, I want you to give me credit in your book so I can show people, hey, look, I edited this comic book, right? And then that will help build your resume. Don't be afraid to do that. Now, I would say this, right? Be careful. Don't take on someone. I've got a 1,000-page graphic novel that you might not want to do that, right? Yeah. Take on something smaller. Look for anthologies. The reality is anthologies don't really sell to the public. I get that they do well on Kickstarter. Did you do one?
Yeah, I've done one. I'm doing another one.
Yeah. Did it do well?
It's great practice for me as a writer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Look,
sure.
It's harder to tell an 8-page story.
Yeah.
a complete 8-page story than it is a 22-page story.
Yep.
And it's harder to tell a 22-page story than it is a 60-page story, right?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, anthologies, they do okay on Kickstarter usually, and part of the reason is there's a whole bunch of people involved, right?
Yeah.
So all those people back it, and their their moms and dads back it, right? so anthologies can do well on Kickstarter, absolutely. You try selling them to the general audiences, and anthologies generally, again, there's always exceptions to the rule, but generally they just don't do well.
Yeah.
That said, it's a great place for you to get some experience and get some credits. When you find out about them, say, hey, I got a story. Submit your story to the editors. Get in all the circles. What's that? There you go.
Chat about right here.
Yeah. That's right. That's what you got to do. I mean, Jolly Green, just look at folks in your circle already. Look at folks in your circle already who are making comics. You'll probably know kind of where they are, because you want to get in early. So there's a couple of different ideas about editing, right? And you guys got to. I warned you before we started.
Oh, you're fine.
You got to rein me in.
Roland, I'm enjoying this. Honestly.
Okay, all right.
This is great.
So there a lot of people, when they think of editing, they think of, here's my script, find my mistakes.
Right.
Right. Well, okay, that's a copy editor. That's a proofreader. And while that has a lot of value, don't get me wrong, that's not where my greatest strength is. My greatest strength is at the beginning, right? When you just have a summary for your story, that's where my strength is, because that's where I come in and go, oh, look, your protagonist doesn't do anything, right? He whines the whole time. Oh, let them do something, right? Get them doing something. And so you want to be involved at the very beginning when you can give the writer feedback to their story. I
appreciate that you didn't hear Roland talk.
Thanks, Hyper. I appreciate that. So you get involved there. So another thing is, like, for me, you can have a summary guide. You just go, look, I want to do this in 3 issues. I want to do this in 4 issues. One of the things I love to find in a summary is, where are your issue beats at, right? Where is your first issue going to end? I need to have the story clearly defined by this point in time, but I need you to leave me on a cliffhanger, right? If you're going to tell one story over the course of a couple of issues, you got to leave me on a cliffhanger, because I got to know everything that's going on, but I got to know I have to be back for the next issue to find out what happens, right? Mm-hmm. So, and if you've got a summary, you can look at that in the summary and say, okay, well, here's where you're going to end the first issue. Here's where you're going to end the second issue, right? And then maybe here's where you're going to end your third issue. So you can get the meaty parts defined, and then you can say, okay, well, now we know this is where the issue is going to end. What do I need in my first issue to foreshadow, right? These people that tell me, oh, I just sit down and write a script, and I'm like, well, how do you foreshadow then? Well, it just happens. No, I don't think so. Maybe if the really brilliant writers can do that, but I've only ever worked with one really brilliant writer. I've worked with some good writers, right? I think Steve Englehart was a great writer. But I've only ever worked with one brilliant writer, and that was Steve Gerber. Wow. Most people, they can't do that. So you need to know where your story is going so that you can set these things up early. And if you can do that, then man, you feed the readers that information, and you plant something, and they're like, well, I don't understand what that meant, but that was cool. And then the next issue, they go, oh, I get to see now, right?
Yeah,
you plant that information for them.
Yeah.
So there's that, right? And then there's the editor when, okay, the script is written. So I want to make sure, there's not too many actions in a panel, not too many words in the panel, right? That's what that editor does. And then of course, once the book is done, then you're just looking at kind of proofreading, right?
Yeah.
So Jolly, I would try to get involved for you for if that's if you want to build up as a editor. Try to get involved as early in the process as your writer buddies will allow you to. Right.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind if you're working for free, and even if you're not working for free, if it's creator owned, it's their project. They can ignore you, and they may ignore you. All they want. But hopefully you'll know the writer that you're talking with, so you'll know what kind of feedback you can give them. What you don't ever want. Your goal is never to insult anybody, and an editor's job is never to change the story. Right. The editor's job is to, it's like the other side. It's like if I'm Ben's editor, my job as Ben's editor is to get the best Ben story out that he's trying to get out. Ben's got a story, right? And I can see that on the page. And my job as the editor is to try to help Ben make this the best possible Ben story, not make it a Roland story, right? Because I go write my own story, right? Yeah. But if I'm the editor, it's to help Ben get the best possible story. And I think if the writer and the editor are both on that page and both understand that, then the writer won't get mad at the editor, and then the editor won't get mad at the writer. That was something that happened some at Malibu. Was sometimes the editor thought, well, you're just trying to tell your story. It's like, no, I'm not. But what you've done here is stupid.
Yeah, I had that. I had a personal job like that where my approach to editing comic books or editing for other people is that I asked the writer, can you give me your context? Can you provide me your context, your backstory, the stuff that you're not going to show on the page, but you have it in the background, like an encyclopedic, I guess, knowledge of the whole storyline. So that way, when I read your script, I have the context and I know exactly what you want to try to do, and I could try to help you execute it properly. Yeah.
Well, what you've just said in different words is the same thing, right? Because you said the knowledge of the whole storyline. Yeah. That's just the summary, right? That's just a different way to say summary.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to edit, right? So if you're going to edit a story, you can't just give me the first issue.
Right.
If I don't know where you're wanting to go with the story, I can copy edit a first issue, right? But if you're just going to give me one issue, I do a lot of miniseries. So a lot of what I say kind of, is that if you're doing a 4-issue miniseries and you just give me the summary for the first issue, I'm like, okay, I can give you feedback on this, but where are you going with it? I need to know where that's going to go so I can help you set those things up in that first issue. If I don't know where the story's going, then I can read the first issue and say, oh, well, why is this happening? Why is this happening? But if you've already given it to me, I don't have to ask those questions. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And like I said, don't be afraid to work for free, particularly if you're trying to establish yourself. I know in the creative community, a lot of people are like, never work for free. They don't give away your. Yeah, you know what? I mean, okay. And if you can find people to pay you, then never work for free. But if you're not landing, if you can't find anybody to give you those jobs, I say sometimes you just if it's something you really want to do, be willing to put some of that time in. Be willing to. I mean, that's just blood, sweat, and tears time. Sometimes you just got to do it.
Yeah. I did it myself.
Molly,
I did it for the criminals. They asked me to proofread their book, and then when I proofread it, I sent them a message back saying, I think we need to sit down.
but see, that's part of the problem with coming in on the last stage, right? If someone says that they want you to edit, and then they hand you a completed book,
right?
There's nothing you can do at that point. It's like, okay, well, you need to go redraw half of this book because it doesn't make sense, right? And so that's why I almost will. If someone asks me to, of course, I don't really do any of it anymore. But when someone would come along and ask me to edit, I would always say, where are you at in the process? Because if you've got the book drawn, there's nothing I can really do.
Right. Yeah.
Because I might say this doesn't work, and you're going to say, well, I devoted 3 pages to it. At that point in time, you've probably spent money on the artist. You're not going to redo it. You're not going to undo that because you're like, well, I spent money on it. I'm going to do it. Okay, well, then I've just wasted my time in telling you all this. So, yeah, you got to get into it at the story level before any of the art is done to really get any editing done.
That would be ideal for sure. Ideal. Yeah. And also for another resource, I found Jim Shooter's blog. It's still up.
Oh, man, by the way. So good.
Yeah. Check out that blog because he provided some fantastic knowledge about comic book writing and comic book editing. And so check that out, jimshooter.com, Jolly. You will not regret taking the time to read his post about editing and writing for comics.
And you need to especially look at his entry on Catwoman for the New 52. Did you read that one?
No.
He rips that one to shreds.
Oh, he does. I gotta find that now.
It is great. It is fantastic. Yeah. Oh, Jim, I think I've read all of the whole blog. I was reading it when he was doing it live. I didn't catch the early part.
Same.
But man, that was such a good blog.
Yeah, it was. It was great. I'm sad that they cut out a bunch of his posts and only kept the good stuff, the comic book editing and writing. But it was great hearing, reading his stories about him growing up reading comics and being this wonderkind of like a writer. He understood, like it clicked for him at a young age, and so
13, I think.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it was just a teen. I think it was 13 or 14.
And he almost got hired by DC because they thought he was a professional writer.
Yeah. His mom had to fly out with him to New York or something like that. Yeah. That's a great recommendation. Yeah, fantastic blog.
Yeah, I learned a lot from that. So if I learned a lot from that, Jolly, you would definitely level up after reading Jim Shooter's blog. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, good
cool.
stuff.
Cool questions, Jolly. Yeah.
We're coming up on an hour and 47 minutes. I don't want to keep you too long. Are you okay?
It's funny. I told my wife, I said, I don't know. He didn't tell me how long. I said, so maybe an hour.
Yeah, same here. My wife asked me the same thing. I was like, it might be like an hour, and then I'll be back down.
She hasn't poked her head in yet. We're supposed to watch a movie when we're done, so she hasn't poked her head in yet. So I think I'm okay for. Let's run another 10 minutes. How's that?
That sounds good.
Make it 2 hours.
There you go.
That sounds good. Jolly has one more question. Then we'll go for that. We've been seeing a lot of talk about 3D assets, photo filters, digital effects, tracing, AR tracing. What does he think about some of these new ways to make comic art?
Very good question.
Well, so I don't know about the 3D assets. Those things have been around for a while. The modeling. Thank you for leaving that up because he's got several commas in there.
Right.
The 3D assets have been around for a while. I've known folks who, if you've ever seen a comic produced just using that, they look terrible, right? They look like someone. They look like someone took pictures of their GI Joes, right? Posed their GI Joes and took pictures of them. So I'm not a fan of that. Photo filters. I'm guessing what you mean is taking pictures of someone doing something and then putting a filter on it. I'm guessing that's what that means. I've seen a couple of photo comics without really any filters, and those were terrible. Digital effects. Now we've been using digital effects in comics via Photoshop for 30 years. Yeah. So, but usually what they'll do is they'll take the artwork and then somehow use Photoshop to digitize that. Right. Tracing, well, depends on what stage of artist you're on. I think tracing is a great way for a young artist to get started. Yeah. To figure, just start tracing, and that helps you get now, don't trace and then publish it. But
unless you're Greg Land.
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
I was too, but I wasn't going to say it. So I don't think. I don't think. Again, I think tracing is a great way for if you're like, hey, I want to learn to draw, but I've never drawn before. Great. grab John Burns, some old reprints of John Burns X-Men, and trace that stuff, right? Or some old John Buscema. John Buscema was one of my favorites, right? Jack Kirby. Trace that stuff, and that will help you understand, how bodies move, how to put pages together. But you got to work your way out of the tracing, right? It's a great way to get started. I don't know what AI art tracing is. I know that there's a big conversations about AI art. I am not a fan of AI art. I'll also tell you, though, I'm not a fan of painted art. All right. So I know everyone loves, Kingdom Come artist. What's his name?
Oh, Alex
Ross. Yeah.
Everyone loves Alex Ross. Okay. Now, don't mishear what I'm saying.
Uh-oh.
I think Alex Ross is a fantastic artist. I just don't like his comic books. I think his covers are phenomenal, but I do not like the comic books. I don't want to open a comic and look at the painting because they're all stiff, right? They all look posed, and they don't look to me like what I want a comic book to be. And I think a lot of AI art is the same way. It looks like a digital painting. I'm not a fan. I know some people are, and that's great. That's the reason we have different comics. But I like to see, an ink line with colors in the lines, right? I want to see that. So I think AI generated artwork is not a good thing. I understand, but if you're like, oh, but Roland, well, okay, I understand why it's being used, because American artists think they're worth $500 a page, and they're not. And so the argument is like, well, you don't think I'm worth it? It's like, dude, I'm not arguing your worth, right? I am arguing what the sales are going to be. We're not going to sell. We're not going to sell enough copies. Your art's not that good to sell for us to make that money, right? And that's like me not getting paid, right? I won't get paid. You get paid. We still can't sell enough copies, right? So I think and this is the reason so many independent comic creators reach out to foreign artists, because they're like, hey, $20 a page, I'll get this for you. Yeah. Because and again, it ain't about worth. I'm not saying any American artist, oh, you're not worth that rate. That's not what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is that it's too expensive for us to make money off the project, and we can't keep making it if we're losing money, right? If we're not making money, right? If I'm zero, I can keep making it, right? Because that means I'm not losing money,
right?
But if I'm losing money just because you want to get paid $500 a page, then I won't be able to make very many comics,
right?
So I get why people are turning to AI art, because, I haven't tried to use it myself, but if I could enter in my script and say, AI, go draw it comic, I might be tempted to do it. I haven't tried to do it, so I don't know how easy or how hard it is to do. But yeah, if I could just upload my script and say, draw this, I might do it. Because then it would just cost me the cost of the AI software. I'm not opposed, though, to have an artist sitting down with tools like Photoshop or something like that to assist them in their drawing. I think we have to look at those software like that in the same way we look at a French curve or a ruler. It's a tool for the artist to use, and if the artists are using it, then I don't have a problem with it. I think we answered all of the commas, didn't we?
I think we did.
We did.
Yeah. Yeah. So AI art's a big deal now. I noticed that there are some was it Global Comics? I think you submit it to Global Comics. You have to click whether AI, you have to say no AI was used in creating this. So yeah.
Just real quick before you go, I want to plug your website here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's so we've been doing the crowdfunders in order to get us to a place where we could go to Diamond. And last February, we started being back in Diamond again. So we've had one book a month in Diamond. That's about all I can really hang with at this point in time. But that's for Trump's number 3 there, I think, isn't it? No, number 4. Sorry.
Number 4,
yeah, Trump's number 4. So that's the final issue of the miniseries. That's that artwork's by Peter Clinton and penciler. Thomas Formonti is the inker, and Sid Van Blue is the colorist. And boy, it's fantastic looking stuff.
Looks great.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
Yeah,
True to the Silver Age spirit, for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's what we're going for.
Yeah.
Do you have a campaign going on right now, or
not right now? No, we're prepping one for July. So probably July 10th-ish, somewhere around in there. So I'll be glad to send you guys the links. What we do when we get it, but we don't have one live right now.
Well, when you do, we'll have you back on because.
That sounds great.
This was great. I absolutely enjoyed talking to you.
Fantastic.
You're a wealth, a fountain of information and knowledge. Yeah, and it was nice. It was nice talking to you.
Well, I enjoyed the heck out of it. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah, no problem.
I love comics, so I love to talk about them.
Same here.
Yeah.
All right, Roland. Well, with that, we'll leave everybody in the chat. Thank you guys for showing up. Jolly, Hyper, Dio.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you for all the great questions, Jolly. All right. Y'all have a great weekend.